Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of 100 Words or Less, the podcast. I am your host, Ray Harkins, and thank you for joining us on this audio adventure with another awesome guest that we have. It's episode number 28. I decided to keep the clothing company thing going on because we had Mark from Glamour Kills on last week, and I said, you know what? I interviewed another clothing company that's actually Southern California based, and the owner of that, Jason Welsher from To Die For Clothing. More on him in a bit. Wanted to dive into some business. Property of Zach. You've heard me talk about it before, but if you're just jumping in now, or you're too lazy to type in propertyofzach.com, then just do it now. They've got great editorials up. They've got all the latest news, reviews. There's a feature that I've started to participate in where it's like a weekly playlist where they basically just pick one song and, it's a collection of all the people who write on that website. They just recommend stuff. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, it links to like a Spotify account. So that way you can just click a link and it'll dump right into your Spotify playlist and you can just listen to all the songs that way. It's awesome. So yeah, visit Property of Zach. We're stoked on our partnership and they've been doing good things for us. And I hope that we've been doing good things for them. Review the show on iTunes. There's been some new reviews. I am stoked. I love it when I see stuff, even if I may not even know what the reference is into. There's a person that compares me to someone else on NPR who I personally have never listened to. That's my friend Brian, but maybe he can explain it to me at some point in the near future. But in any event, I love seeing those new reviews. I really do appreciate that. And drop us a star rating as well. Depending on your level of commitment, the star ratings will take you 4 seconds, and the review could take you a minute and a half. So I do pay attention to that, so I appreciate that. And then finally, go check the website, 100wordsorless.com. I try to post stuff during the week in between shows, cool stuff I find online, music, movies, whatever else I've been listening to recently. Now I have people messaging me on my computer. Everybody hears that, and that's the way that it'll be. I'm not going to edit this. And one other note before we dive into the interview. This week I will be at The Fest in Gainesville, Florida. The beautiful people at No Idea Records put this thing on. And I was there, I want to say 2001 or 2002 with my friends in Alexis on Fire when I was on tour with them. We got to play the show or one of the millions of shows that they have there. So I'm pretty excited because I had a really, really good time when I was down there previously. Tons of good food, a lot of good camaraderie. And I'm hoping it'll be a nice little trip down there. Get to travel with the fine folks at No Sleep Records. And I'm excited about that. So if you happen to be down there and you would like to say what's up, you can contact me via Twitter at 100 Words Podcast. And then we can say, what's up? Give each other high fives and, talk about stupid shit because that's kind of what we do. Anyways, so yes, our guest, Jason Welsher from To Die For Clothing. I don't even know where to begin because I've known this dude since I was about 17 years old. As you'll come to hear in the interview, he was the very first person who I completed my first business transaction with in regards to, doing t-shirts for my old band. And it was an interesting feeling because it was like, I was in high school and I'm like hiring somebody to print shirts for me. It just kind of felt weird. But in any event, this interview is an absolute must listen for anybody that wants to do something creative and start something on their own. Because Jason is very honest and opens up a lot about the mistakes that he made in starting To Die For and also the mistakes that he made as To Die For grew. You'll kind of hear a little bit of that towards the end of the interview. But Jason has a really, really interesting story. He's played in bands for many of the years that he's been involved in the music scene. So it was nice to be able to get more of a clarity on what exact bands he played in. And I just think that a lot of you will identify with this interview and find some really cool things to extract from it and hopefully learn and build on in your own life. Because essentially, that's why I'm trying to do this. I want you people to learn just as much as I've been able to learn from these people. So, yep, here you go. This is our conversation with Jason from To Die For. And yeah, check it out. Usually I like to start things off with just kind of like my own either memory or experience of like, how I came to know you, like as an entity or whatever.
All right.
I mean, I remember like when I first started to go to shows when I was like, 15 and 16 years old, it was like, 94, 95. And just seeing you playing, I had no idea who you were, seeing you playing like Give Until Gone. And it was one of those things where it was, I was just impressed at your unique drumming capabilities. I was like, because I always wanted to be a drummer myself.
Oh, that's crazy.
And so, yeah, I know. And so, but I was never talented enough. Mm-hmm. So because I was never talented enough, I wanted to have a unique style myself. And so it's like, watching people like yourself and like Ken Floyd from 18 Visions, where it's like, you guys were not conventional drummers. Like you had your own style where it's like,
totally.
Ken Floyd had his cymbals at the ceiling and you just had a very, you had a very, it's weird because it's like, your drumming style was like mechanical in one hand, but then it flowed. Like it didn't feel like it was forced, cause there's some drummers where you're just like, no slight against him, but like obviously Troy, where it's like, he was a very mechanical drummer.
He hit light.
Totally.
He hit light.
Yes.
He could do drum rolls like nobody's business.
Totally.
And
but yeah, there's just like you kind of combine different styles. But anyway, so it's like just viewing you as a musician and a dude that played in bands, I was like, oh, okay, cool. And then because I've known you for so long, I have no fucking clue where we like officially like, hi Ray, hi Jason.
Yeah.
No idea.
Yeah.
And like
Dude, I'm drawing a blank too.
Yeah. Because there are certain people you've known for so long that it's just like, I've always known them. Like you've existed in my life since, I was 16 years old, and it's like,
yeah, but how did we know one another?
Yeah. And how did that introduction came up? But anyway, so then, obviously like from that point on, once you started Die Trying, and then, you started to brand yourself as, order merch through me and do this type of stuff.
Yeah.
And that was literally the first like business transactions like I'd ever done in my life, as far as like,
oh, that's funny.
I mean, besides like, I worked at Blockbuster Video and shit, but like, business transaction where it's like, I had something that I needed someone else to do, and like, I hired someone, quote unquote.
Yeah.
And it was just like, and then obviously like it worked so well where you were like, oh, like, we can sponsor you guys, and I was just like, what?
Yeah.
My mind was blown. It was like the concept of like being sponsored by anything didn't make any sense. And I mean, I shit you not that it's like the sense of pride that like not only myself but the rest of the dudes in Taken had to be like, Die Trying, like this is our shit. And it was like we were totally swelled about that. It was like you were Hurley or something, where it was like, yeah, like we are wrecked.
Yeah, that's it.
I know. And it was just, it was all those things were just so crystal clear in my mind, as far as like especially the feeling, like I said, where it was like we did like, puff our chests out because it was like, yeah, dude, we have this fucking Nautical Star shirt. I mean, it's like an Orange County hardcore staple, like
totally.
And so it was just so funny, kind of having all those.
Shirt. I mean, that shirt was just epic. I mean, everybody had that shirt,
whether they liked the band or not.
Yeah, and I mean, I would say 95% of the people that were wearing them.
Right.
I mean, back then you didn't buy really things that you didn't know about. You knew about what you were buying, whereas nowadays people will just buy whatever
because it looks cool. Right.
Yeah, so I don't think back then. I know that for sure. Everybody, especially that I saw like on either the East Coast or the West Coast, wearing that shirt, knew who Taken was.
Right.
So
yeah, but all those things were just so funny in my mind, and so kind of backpedaling a little bit. Were you born and raised like in California, as far as like the Inland Empire, like that area, or where did you come up?
I was born in Long Beach.
Oh, okay.
And My parents moved to a city called Grand Terrace, which was pretty much just all orange groves, and it just it connected with Riverside, California.
Okay.
So
did you live, like your parents lived in Long Beach and they had you, and then they were like, let's
yeah, I think they lived there for just a short while, and then when I was born, then they completely moved somewhere. I don't know if it was for my father because he had a job, or my mother had a job that changed up, or what they did. But yeah, that's a good question. I have to ask my parents when I see them this week.
Yeah.
No. I have no clue why we moved to where we did. I think that at the time, my parents bought a house, and it might have been less expensive to live away from the beach,
more cost effective. Yeah, sure.
And they wanted to move to a new house, a new community that was, like I said, behind us was all orange groves growing up, and then nowadays I want to say there's probably 7 or 8 blocks of homes now, and in orange groves.
Yeah.
So
definitely.
Yeah, a lot has been built over the years, and I think at some point, obviously nowadays they just kind of stopped and just left it as orange groves, so then the farmers can do what they need to do.
Right. Because Grand Terrace, that's part of the Inland Empire, right?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And Grand Terrace is considered San Bernardino County.
Oh, okay.
Grand Terrace is small, very, very small. Only one exit off the freeway.
Okay.
So it's a very small community. I don't even know what the population is, but yeah, Josh and I, Josh, my brother who goes by the artist Def, and he's a co-owner and partner in To Die For. Him and I, we grew up our whole lives. My parents still live in the home that,
really?
Yeah, they still to this day live in that home.
That's cool.
And
that very rarely happens.
Oh, yeah, never. It's such a trip now going to my parents after all these years, and the sinks are so much lower than the one I have at my home, and
sure.
Even the toilet's a lot lower to the ground, and it's just a trip,
right.
They haven't ever really. They've always taken care of their home, so
there's been no reason to
upgrade or do anything. I think at some point they want to do something to the house, but at this point they're just trying to make ends meet.
Of course.
At this point,
what did they do? What I always find interesting when kids obviously end up moving out and living on their own. What did they do with your room? Like, what's your room now? Is it just like a storage space, or?
Well, here's something funny. Growing up, my father and our parents wanted Josh and I to be like the best guitar and drummer ever. They my dad enforced music into us, and we loved music, classic rock, metal, and hard rock, and they wanted us to be like the next Van Halen brothers. Yeah,
that's amazing.
Straight up,
it was like focus.
My dad bought like all these Def Leppard, Van Halen, Quiet Riot. I remember I had a Twisted Sister, poster framed, everything in my room. And my parents had bought me, when I was in the 2nd grade, they bought me a drum set, and the drum set was just so huge. It had double bass.
Yeah, you're in 2nd grade.
Totally, 2nd grade. But he got this deal on this drum set that he couldn't refuse.
Right.
But it just took up a whole entire room. And my dad wasn't going to put this thing in his garage because that's where his cars and his tools and stuff are. So he's like, well, the only place to put this is in one of the rooms. And shortly after that, I had a bed on one side and a drum kit, and I barely had any space to move. I had a little dresser with all my clothes in it.
Sure.
And then shortly after that, my dad had bought my brother a full stack Marshall cabinet with a Fender Stratocaster, and just went for it. Just bought him the best of the best.
That's amazing.
And just was like, look, if these kids are going to do what we want them to do, they need to have some of the best tools on the market. So my parents are really, really supportive, and really they didn't spoil us. They just basically, they knew what they wanted. They knew what we were capable of. So they went and they tried to do the best that they could possibly do, so we were able to do those things.
Like you said, you had the tools. They weren't like that. I honestly, I've just never heard parents having that sort of laser-like focus where they were just like, this is what I would like for them.
Yeah.
And to have you guys, I mean, I don't know how, Josh grew up as far as like his guitar playing was concerned, but to like have you not rebel against that, because that's like that's a delicate balance.
Yeah, definitely. You have these parents that just kind of shove these things down your throat. Hey, you got to play this. You got to be the best. You got to do. And that was it. My parents, they wanted us. My dad got me drum lessons. My brother took guitar lessons. Our parents took us out to concerts and showed us like these bands playing live.
Right.
One of my first concerts that I went to was the Genesis, and it was like Phil Collins right there in the flesh, like just tearing it up.
Right.
And so that was huge for me, you know, and huge for my brother.
And so you never felt that sort of itch to be like, oh, I don't need to do this because it's being kind of forced on me.
That's it. Like we had other things. Josh and I both played year-round soccer and baseball, and then we tippy-toed into basketball.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really about it for sports. We both loved those, baseball and soccer, and so the other hobby that got in the way was skateboarding. We had skated since we were little kids. I mean, I'd say probably first, second grade. I mean, I was already like, knew all these skaters. I knew
Thrasher magazine.
Yeah, I'd go to the grocery store with my parents, and I'd be in the magazine the whole time while my mom's shopping and getting the groceries for the week or whatever.
Yeah.
And Josh would be having Trans World, and I'd have Thrasher, and we would switch magazines, and we would. I think at some point we started tearing pages out of the magazines and going home and putting them in like photo albums or just collecting them. Without
this was the best stuff.
Yeah, like here's a rad picture of Tony Hawk, or Josh's favorite skater was Steve Caballero. So and I had Tony Hawk, so it was like anything Bones Brigade or Pal Peralta related was just like we had to have it.
That's incredible.
So,
but because you never felt the need to be like, Dad, Mom, I'm not playing drums. Like, stop forcing this on me, because you did have these other things.
Exactly.
So it felt natural.
Yeah. So we had skateboarded. We got hurt. I'd come home. My dad would always say, "Well, the drumsticks don't do that to you," and he would really just kind of remind me, "Hey, man, those drums are in there. Like, go in there," But he wouldn't say, "Hey, man, it's this or nothing."
Interesting.
You had the sports. You had to go out and see your friends. You had to, as long as you did good in school, that was the main thing. My dad, he's the ball buster out of my parents. My mom's happy-go-lucky. Like, of course, Jason and Josh could do anything that they want. They could get in trouble, and it's just whatever.
Right.
They're still.
I'll be able to explain it away.
Exactly. They're still the best thing that ever happened to me. And my dad is like, 2 strikes and you're out. There's no 3 strikes. Not baseball. It's like you get a warning, and then the next time you're out. Like that's just it. So. My dad always had tried to show us all these things, like working on cars and just hey, the drums, these things can be powerful for you and helpful in your career and in life. If you want to become a pro skateboarder, and you want to keep skateboarding and doing what what you're good at right now, or what you think is you're having fun with, and so be it. So that's they took us to skateboarding competitions.
Right. It just sounds like you were saying, where it was like they were just merely giving you guys tools and suggestions, but never giving you those strict frameworks where it's like, this needs to happen, but you can't do this. Like, and this needs to happen, but you can't do that.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, that seems like a very healthy and organic way in order to keep you interested and keep you going, as opposed to like I can't. I mean, my mom was like, Ray, play the clarinet. I was like, that was the fucking worst thing of all time. I did it for a year. I'm like, I've got asthma. Like, this is terrible. And it was just, she'll say that was a terrible idea now because but she played it. So she had no other, idea of like how to introduce anything. That's really cool. So what did your parents do for a living during that time?
Well, just to backtrack, what my parents end up doing and what they're doing with their rooms today.
Just
so we don't get off topic too far, because what we ended up doing is turning one whole entire room into a band room.
Nice.
And my parents allowed us to play until 10 o'clock p.m. at night. Oh. And we could jam as loud as we want. And that was the deal. Like, my parents were like, as long as they're in there doing their thing, that's fine.
Yeah.
So we only had my room became like basically the jam room.
Got it.
You know, my
so
drums,
Josh split a room.
The full stack Marshalls, and a record player. And that was it. So we could put records on and jam to them and try to mimic, you know, some of our favorite musicians. And then we had bunk beds in my brother's room.
Amazing.
So then we had our dressers, and we could fit everything in his room.
Right.
And then I think we just shoved like toys and whatever else that we had like into the closet.
Sure.
You know, as a kid, I don't think we really even played with very many toys. And I don't think, you know, cartoons, we didn't really watch too many cartoons. Like, some of the cartoons, to me, going back, I'm looking at them like, wow, I remember these cartoons, but I don't remember actually watching them.
Yeah, they don't have, like, they trigger a memory, but it's not like this, like, oh my God, I loved this thing or whatever. Yeah.
I love Transformers.
Right.
And,
like, I know what they are.
Yeah. Exactly.
Like, I was busy shredding outside or whatever.
Totally. So, that's that. And now I think the jam room is pretty much my mom's office.
Got it.
And it still has like some things up on the wall and some things that are in there that, you know, we had as kids that my mom just will not throw away.
Of course.
She's a mom.
Yeah, they're remnants of what obviously was like this room existed before. This is not just my office.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what Josh and I shared as a room with our bunk beds, I think that right now is a workout room.
Oh, nice.
And which my parents don't ever really use. So when I go to the house, normally that door is just closed. It could be clutter for all I know. I have no clue. I don't ever like peek around.
Peek in there, right.
But I think there was like a treadmill or something in there last.
Something unused.
And a bunch of dust because no one had been in there in a while. And
so
probably
funny.
Some more things from Josh and I's childhood memories or things that my mom will not throw away again. So there's 2 rooms of clutter in my mind that I'm
right.
You know,
storage-ish type of stuff. Yeah.
So, but my parents growing up, my mom has always been in like the medical industry. She's always worked at Loma Linda Hospital, which is a huge hospital, Seventh-day Adventist hospital, and she's worked there. She's still in the medical field and working in that industry. She just doesn't work for Loma Linda Hospital anymore.
Okay.
She worked there for close to 40 years.
Oh, wow.
Which is crazy. It's unheard of, you know?
Yeah, no, it doesn't. Yeah, people, I can't remember reading the statistic where it was like people of our generation, by the time that they've hit, like, I think it's either 40 or 50, they've had like 4 or 5 jobs. Whereas like our previous generation, so like our parents, would have like 2 by that time. And it's just that's what people do.
It's
people
like it's like leases on cars now. They're trading jobs like, you know, I'm over this within 2, 3, 4 years tops, and now on to something new.
Totally, yeah. Well, that's cool that obviously that's exactly what your mom was supposed to do back then.
And my dad is still in the field of truck driving. He works in the construction industry, so he. You know, the business is very up and down. He doesn't own his own business. He's always driven for somebody.
Okay.
But it's funny, driving here, even though I asked you for the address, I knew how to get here. I just wanted like to have that as I don't have to text you later. And it's just good to have people's addresses in your phone and on file. And so I remember totally how to get here. I really didn't even know. And I look at that when we were talking about threads and things that had, you know, that explain how you are or what you are today.
Yeah.
I think the big thing for me is, you know, growing up, my parents didn't find that babysitter. I went on the road with my father, and when he was truck driving, I was in the passenger seat. And, you know, back then, it's probably just as dangerous as it is today, but it just you could have a child in a seat next to you, and nobody was going to fuss about it.
No.
And so he would just pull off, change my diaper, do my business, feed me, and truck drive, and just try to juggle 2 things at once, which he was really good at. But
wow.
Yeah, I think that as I got older, And, you know, even when I started school on my summers, I would go here and there with my father on and just go for the day.
Because he's a long haul truck driver?
No, not long haul, because he wanted to be home every single night. Because that was the thing. I think before I was born, he did the long haul driving.
Got it.
And it was like, okay, after the kids, I can't do that. I might go away for a night or two, but that's tops. Like he'll go drive to, you know, Sacramento, or Arizona, and he'll just stay over because you can't drive so many hours in truck
one day, right?
Yeah, you just gotta. There's a limit. So.
Nice. So basically, he was hauling you around, and
hauling the sand and gravel or rocks, whatever he's doing, and I'm in the passenger seat.
That's incredible.
The radio is, you know, cranked up to volume 11, and we're playing air drums together. And I mean, that's how I got into drums. My father played drums, so I remember as a kid, he had a band with the guy next door that played keyboard, and if I remember right, they sounded like a Doors kind of band.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, he played the drums, and it was funny as I got older and got more into, even when I lived at home, it was like my father played less of the drums. I think it was just after the band just really wasn't doing much. He just really just lost interest, and maybe started focusing on like, you know, just really things that need to be done around the house,
right?
Or just being a father, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's it. I mean, really. That's why I play the drums, and still to this day, we don't know, my dad and mom and, you know, all of us together, you know, we're playing air drums, driving down the, you know, freeway, jamming to Journey or whatever.
Yeah. So that's so cool. I mean, it always struck me, just in the way that obviously like you are as a person, and just kind of the way that, you know, you not only you present yourself, like I said, as a person, but you know, the company and the values that you guys kind of drive home is the fact that you don't hide the fact it's like, oh yeah, it's me and my brother. Like, you know, and family is like such a, you know, a crucial part of of who you are, and obviously what your company is. And I mean, I think that really warms my heart, because I've noticed that in a lot of conversations I've had on the show, where it's like a typical sort of punk rock hardcore experience is like, oh, fuck my parents, like, you know, I hate them. And I mean, and you know, some people like that, you know, that's a quote unquote valid reaction. It's like, you know, their parents may have been shitty to them or whatever. Like, but you know, once you grow older and kind of realize like, oh, okay, maybe I was being a dick as it's like whatever. But it's like it seems like you've been able to kind of usher through all that and be like, no, like we're really close. Even when things might have been difficult.
Totally.
You were still really close. Totally.
Yeah, I think we had a small family. I mean, we don't really have a huge, you know, extended family. Yeah, it's just really, we have, you know, an aunt and some cousins on the East Coast, and everyone else, like Josh and I, really kind of wrote off as family, like, just because they've done some funny things and you know, in our lives and to each other, and they're just mean, and you know, just people to just do away with. Like, why let these people in your life and around you, surround you, when they're just bad energy, you know? Right, for sure. So we have a small family, and it's awesome. You know, that's why I think that's really brought the family element for Josh and I. Not only that we're brothers, but you know, we just have always, anybody that we come in contact with, we're always interested about them and what makes them who they are today. Yeah. You know, and that's just it. I always feel like when I have a discussion with someone, I'm the guy asking questions. Yeah. Because I'm intrigued. I want to know about something, whether or not they're, you know, their life was boring, and now and the reason why their life was boring is why they're doing what they are today, or the complete opposite. Sure. So it's just.
Well, I think it's funny that you hit on that, because I agree with you 100%. I mean, I'm exactly the same as you, where it's like anybody that's ever asked me for a piece of advice to, like, you know, like in the music industry, or like, you know, how do you do this and how do you do that? And, you know, I always come back to the fact that it's like, just be genuine. And it's as like cliched and simple as that sounds. It's like, you know, like, you know, a story that I've told before, where it's like, you know, the idea of networking, where it's just like, okay, like, you know, you hear networking and you think of like, you know, going to a conference and handing out business cards, and it's like, you know, that, I mean, that's like what it's like in the quote unquote real world. But it's like, when you actually do take the time, if you do work with someone professionally first and you kind of like get to know them, and it's like, through the course of, 3 or 4 phone conversations, it's like, like you said, ask fucking questions.
Totally.
And not just like from a selfish standpoint, but just like, get to know people, because the moment, and I mean, this, the moment that a person decides to invest in you in any way, shape, or form, whether it's like investing in just having a relationship or investing in your company or whatever, you have them. They're part of your network, and you can always rely on them for either help or advice or whatever. And it's like, I mean, that's exactly what, To Die For has been able to do.
Totally.
Because you guys do include people in that.
Exactly. I just find it fascinating that everybody is put on this earth and everybody has something to offer.
Of course.
And, I just always want to know about those things. I want to know, like, why it is and what it is and how it came to be.
Yeah.
I'm just fascinated by all those things. And so I think out of the two of us, well, I know out of the two, Josh and I'm the loudmouth. I'm the guy that goes and gets in everyone's face and talks and knows everybody. And he's the kind of setback, like
he's the quiet artist.
Totally, he's the emo artist. Does this thing, and that's great. I respect him. And there's certain people that can just kind of crack that egg when it comes to Josh and get him to loosen up. And it's not that he's like tight or he's stressed or he's just that's just him. He's a little bit more reserved. And it's funny, he plays soccer with a bunch of he plays co-ed soccer, and a lot of the people on his team are all people that went to high school with Josh and I.
Okay.
And so when soccer season starts, I haven't gone to one of his games yet, and he's played 2 seasons yet. So I feel like the horrible brother, which I'm going to for sure go to a game this season. Yeah. But one of his coaches, is his brother was my age, and his coach is Josh's age. So it's just funny, but. I'm always like, hey, what's up with Mark? What's he doing these days? And he's like, I don't know. And I'm like, dude,
you play on a team.
You play on a team. But it's because they don't practice.
Yeah,
that's why. So he can never ask those questions. They get on the field. They have their jerseys.
They do their thing.
They do the game day, and that's it.
Yeah,
they're not cracking, oranges and Capri Suns after the game and going to get. Pizza at Resident Pizza and playing Galaga and talking shop. It's game, and then they're off with their husband and wife and they're done. Like they're going to get the kids or round up the troops and do what they do on the weekends.
Yeah.
They're over it. They just do soccer to play soccer to like let off some steam.
Of course.
Get some exercise, like working out, and then they're done.
Yeah.
So I'm always like, dude, what's up with this guy?
Yeah.
And it's like. He has no clue. He has no clue. Which I would probably know every single thing about every one of these people on the team.
You'd be on the field. Teams. You'd be on the field talking and be like, "Dude, how's it going?" You're like, "I'm in the fucking game, dude."
Yeah, totally. Like, hey, Jason, dude, just come on, man. I mean, and the ball's getting passed to me. And, I'm getting these chances to score or pass the ball to someone else, and here I am striking conversation.
Right, exactly.
It reminds me of when someone hits like a base hit in baseball.
Oh yeah,
and they know the first baseman,
of course,
and they're talking shot,
totally catching up.
And it's like the game could be like 3-3, 9th inning.
Yeah,
and it's like stressful at this point, or even it could be in extra innings, and they're having I'm like, wow, this is funny. Like, they hate each other.
They technically hate each other, totally, but they still are humans, and they still have been friends.
That's rad about. That's what I like about sports.
Yeah.
So,
so then, as you, so obviously, like because you came from such a rich musical background, and obviously music became a part of your life at such an early age. When was kind of the more, the independent music stuff? Like, when did that start to come into play? Like, was that when you were in high school and you started to kind of discover shows and everything?
Yeah, it's just I found out about hardcore and straight edge, and we had this a circle of friends of us had this older brother named Brian that was straight edge and knew about all the old bands, Gorilla Biscuits, Instead,
right.
Crippled Youth, Guttermouth, all these bands that some people today don't even probably know about that are into some of those bands.
Yeah,
we just kind of leached off him. Like we just, basically sucked him dry of all his knowledge and his music, and recorded all his records. And And then we started going record shopping ourselves. We'd make these trips down to Vinyl Solution in Huntington Beach, and we would go to Zed's and
was this like freshman sophomore year?
Freshman sophomore year. I graduated in 95, so it's probably like 91, 92.
Sure.
And I found out about straight edge, and it was such a weird thing back then. It was like I felt like it had so many more you couldn't have sex, and you had to be a vegetarian. I mean, I wasn't vegetarian at that time, and
you didn't feel like you fit the total bill.
Yeah, and it was like you couldn't drink caffeine, so there was like more labels, there was more.
Yeah,
there were
layers.
Layers, exactly, upon layers, and we just said screw it. We started getting into straight edge and hardcore and going to shows, and and just before you know it, it just started growing within our community, our scene, and Riverside and San Bernardino, and a little bit. We really didn't know too much about Orange County or LA. We kind of stuck to ourselves because that was
you didn't drive,
really, totally. So we couldn't get very far, and we back then you didn't really make friends as easy, and you just kind of stayed within your means, and so we just, like I said, passed records on and started getting into stuff. And I remember bringing all these records home and listening to in our jam room, and my dad be like, what is this? That's not music.
Yeah, I was gonna give you my next question, where it was like, obviously, I'm sure that was a huge disconnect for him. He's like, Jason, I'm glad you're into music, but this is trash.
Totally. He's like, he would say like, oh, what is? You can't even hear what they're saying. Like, you can't even, how do you make out what they're saying? And
right.
Just totally like funny about it, And, but he never said, oh, you can't listen to that. You just like, you listen to whatever you want. It's fine, I mean, Josh and I listen to like rap and hip hop then too, a little bit. I think Josh listened a little bit more than I did. But,
but there was no censorship from your parents.
I mean, my dad really hated that music.
Right.
Really hated that. I mean, he was on. I mean,
next level.
Like just heated. Like, oh God, what is that? And it's because they didn't play instruments. They were just beats. They were making on vinyl or through a computer or some kind of studio. And so he was just way anti that. And
sure.
So
when as you were, I'm sure a lot of people like once you started to go to shows and everything like that, and once you started to see bands in front of you that were like not playing arenas like you had been seeing prior to that, when did the idea of like, hey, let's start a band? Like my brother and I have this room. Like how did that kind of?
Yeah, we just started jamming, and everybody started like from listening to music and we were like, oh man, this guy's picking up a guitar. Oh, he just bought a guitar used. And some people's family and parents, they went and did kind of the same thing that they did for our parents did for us. And slowly but surely, everyone just really got like, it was like, wow, I want to do this. I see these bands play. I could have a band myself.
Yeah, for sure.
And people just started picking up equipment and getting really good at it. And just like nowadays, I mean, it's fascinating to see how young musicians and thanks to the internet, how good everyone has gotten because of just listening or seeing something or picking up something. Everyone's just learning faster than they ever did.
Totally.
So back then, we really just picked up and just tried to do power chords and how you really found your ground is just really mimicking and covering all these bands that you listen to.
Right.
And that's just how you did it. We even played band, would jam and covers bands music, and then until we could write our own and find a common ground between all of us.
Right.
So that's just it. I just really got into hardcore and playing drums and playing shows that didn't pay you. And
right. What was the first band that you started to actually like? What was the first band that you actually played a show with?
I started a band called Dead Serious.
Okay.
And it's all friends, of course.
Sure. So this is like sophomore, junior year of high school?
Yeah, sophomore. Yeah. And it was just great. I mean, I think we played maybe some talent shows and like played all the local venues and opened up. And
what did it sound like? What were you guys trying to achieve then?
I think at that point, what later became like Bold. Was Crippled Youth, and we loved Crippled Youth because they were all like kids
totally
making music,
Yeah.
And so I want to say that our sound back then was very much alike to Crippled Youth.
Got it. That's what you were trying to achieve. You're like, that'd be cool if we could do something like this. Yeah.
And you know, we knew about all the Orange County bands. We had all their records, and we loved everything. And you know, it's just like Sick of It All was huge to us. You know, it's like, oh, one day we'll play with Sick of It All.
Right.
You know,
and then our lives will be
Chromags and you know, Biohazard, and I mean that was like those three bands that like played together. It was like one of my biggest favorite shows, like almost all to this day that I ever went to. That I was like, whoa, this is it.
Well, I mean, because during that time in the early '90s, those bands were signing to major labels, and it was like, you know, this is the next big thing.
Totally,
like,
and you didn't really know what touring was. You know, like it was weird. It was like touring. Yeah. So a band coming out and playing in your city.
They just it's so funny because I can't remember who I was talking to, but that concept was so foreign to me.
Totally.
Like bands materialized in front of you, and then they went home, and it was like you didn't understand that it was like, oh shit, they took like 3 weeks to get out here or what? Like
totally.
And then once you did discover that, it was like honestly, I distinctly remember the first time ever understanding the concept of tour was watching. When Strife put out that VHS tape, that was like one trip, and it showed their tour of the East Coast, and it was like, you know, it was like a 2-week thing, but it was just like watching it, I was like, my head just exploded, and I was like, oh, that's what bands do.
Yes, this is how they do it. They rent U-Hauls, or they, I mean, they weren't buying vans back then. No. They were renting U-Hauls. A buddy's van. Their mom and dad was like maybe buying a used van for them.
Caravan tour. Like 3 cars taking you to places.
Oh yeah. Good point. Like I forget about that.
There was the drummer had his own car because there's no fucking way you could fit everything.
Totally.
And he drove to the show by himself. Because there was all the drums were also in the passenger seat.
Totally. In the trunk, everywhere. Yeah, everywhere. Guitar amps and head is all in the back seat. They only have room in the passenger for the girlfriend or maybe the singer.
Totally.
You know, and that's just it.
Yeah, you just take 1 million cars to the show because there's no other way to transport it.
That was before traffic, so it was easier to get to shows. I mean, you could drive 5 cars to a show and maybe not hit traffic.
Right, for sure. That's hilarious.
There was more lanes than there were people and cars.
Yeah, know? Totally.
And so it was easy getting somewhere.
Yeah, it was more navigatable. And so then, was your high school experience like just because you had like bands and you kind of you had your community there? Like, did you enjoy the high school experience and did you take school seriously at all, or was it kind of like?
I just got by. I got C's and B's. I wasn't insane, like straight A student.
Right.
I enjoyed all the classes like wood shop, auto shop, ceramics was my jam.
Yeah.
Just anything you had to use your hands and make.
Yeah, always.
English and math and all that stuff. I just did what I needed to do to get by.
Right.
I never played sports in high school because I thought it was just all. Just who you knew and all about it was just politics. So I just was like, I'm not going to get into that. And I don't need to be at school any longer than an actual school day, the 6 hours or whatever I'm here.
So like, did you go to dances and stuff, or you were just kind of like,
no, not really. Yeah. I think the only thing I ever went to was my senior prom. And that's it.
Right.
That's it. And that's a whole blur to me for some reason. I don't even recall it at all.
You're like, that was just.
I didn't go to my reunion. I did little with school. I just was like,
you were in and you were
outside. Yeah.
Got it.
But yeah, I mean, our schools, I enjoyed going to school, looking back at it, maybe not the time, but going back and looking, I mean, I had a pretty gnarly school, you know, the city of Colton High School, the city of Colton was nasty at the time. It's probably cleaned up just a bit now, but I mean, we had gangs on every single north, west, east, you know, south, everything. And, you know, they ran insane drugs, you know, weapons. Like one of the gangs ran all the other gangs. You know, while the 4 years I was at that school, 3 different people got killed. 2 of them, 1 got ran over, 2 got shot. And so I look at it.
Yeah, I could see why you would want to keep your head down.
Totally. But, you know, I knew all the gangsters. I had classes with these guys.
Right.
I knew, you know, that their uncles and family at home and even themselves are part of the problem. Mm-hmm. But as long as you don't do anything to offend them, they're your best friends. And it's great to have those people on your back.
Of course.
and just have your side at the end of the day. And it's funny, a lot of those gangsters and people that we made friends with all started hanging out in our area.
Yeah.
And it was weird. It was like this weird crossover.
Yeah, it's like
we started having, because outside of being a gangster and living the hard life of whatever you're doing, these people had talent and they had taste, and some of them played sports, and they had musical taste, and they didn't all just listen to rap or oldies.
Right.
Some of these guys got into hardcore and started like getting out of the gang life and getting into like punk rock and hardcore. And
interesting.
A couple of them turned into being like non-racist skins. It was funny. Like some of like our hardcore friends turned into like it was like this big thing, like being a skinhead.
Wow.
They started like forming a whole unit, and they never changed their attitude. They just changed the style and their appearance.
That's super interesting, because I've never heard of that experience where it was like, because you would think those two worlds, it's like obviously like oil and water, where it's just like, hardcore kids that don't drink and don't smoke. It's like, what would I have in common with them?
Totally.
But then it's like, that's pretty cool.
But it was rad. I mean, I think it was like this acceptance, and going back and looking at it, like one of the biggest things that we always strove for is unity. We always tried to
be inclusive, right?
Exactly. Be into one another and just like find out new things and have things outside of that bubble.
Yeah.
Whether, like I said, it was sports or like I liked music that just wasn't all hardcore.
Right, of course.
I liked other type of stuff that I grew up listening to.
Yeah, you had other frames of reference.
Totally.
Right.
And some of the kids that I hung out with, they all played sports as well.
Yeah.
So.
That's cool. I never heard of that experience.
It's funny sounding, but it all worked.
Yeah,
it all worked. Where it almost sounded like a prison. Where it wasn't so like segregated. It was like we all came together at the end of the day, and we're like, hey, we're all people. At the end of the day, maybe outside of the schoolyard, we're not friends.
Right. You broke down the whatever facades, their corners that people put. That's cool. And so, as you were graduating high school, did you have desires to go to college or anything, or you're pretty much like, what was your sort of, where was your head at that time?
As soon as I got out of high school, I just started thinking about, I went to RCC, Riverside Community College, and took a bunch of classes there, and I just kind of got by just like I did in high school. And it wasn't until I started kind of really starting my company, I started doing really poorly in school. And I found out, shortly that I only really went to school just for the same things I went to high school for, was soccer, and I had a music class, and I wanted to make music, and so all those classes I did great at, but everything else I just completely did poor and just didn't get great grades. So I started doing booking. I started booking bands around that time. I still played music. Whatever band I was playing at the time, I probably played in like 10.
You played in 4. Bands. Well, because there was such a shortage, and there still is. Like, finding a good drummer that has like, that's reliable, has like a place to practice. I mean, that's just a rarity. So it's like you played in 9 million bands like during that. Because you played in Sever.
I played in
Burial, right.
I did a tour with the band Process. It was on Conversion Records. That was probably the highlight of my life. Like, I played a couple shows at Chorus of Disapproval, did some reunion shows. But Process, they wrote a rad record and needed a drummer. Their drummer and guitar player quit, and I just went on the road and I did a whole like 3-month tour right out of high school.
Oh, really?
Went to Canada. Yeah, just met so many amazing.
Was that like your most extensive U.S. tour where it's like?
Yeah, did everything. Wow. Did everything except for Boston. Played like every city.
Yeah.
Went just kind of tippy-toed, played Victoria and Vancouver in Canada.
Sure.
That was it in Canada. But yeah, man, I was just blown away. Like, 96, right out of high school, playing, the world. We played a bunch of shows with 108, played a bunch of shows with Strife. That's how I got to know Strife.
Nice.
Man, and I'm trying to think. We played with Coalesce in Denver.
Yeah.
Man, it's just like
all that must have been such an amazing experience.
Yeah, it's like, dude, these bands I listened to are 7 inches at home, and here I am playing with them.
Right.
And here I'm just playing. I haven't been on actual physical 7-inch yet, but here I am playing a band that I love Love's record that I already had a drummer that recorded on this record. I'm just basically mimicking what he played on tour. And
that's cool.
Did that, and really out of all the bands after that, I kind of just got really out of the hardcore like metal element and started. The last band I really was doing was this band called Dear Hearts, and they were kind of like a Murder City Devils type band. But while I was doing that band, I did this band that was kind of like the faint sounding style with like kind of like a dance rock element called Rebel Fever. And that band I think was probably the most popular band I ever played in, other than Burial in the hardcore days. But man, we used to sell out all the bars, and it was crazy. And we used to get paid, and we could literally not make a living playing shows. But, we would venture out on the weekends and play up in LA, and every show would do amazing because they were just like the social, media that we used and those tools helped us enable us to spread out.
Your reputation preceded you. You'd be like, oh, you got to see Rebel Fever because of this. Because our shows are fun.
And our whole band had like a different element with all the different players, and it was our singer that's just a wacko. You know, he's best dude ever, but just put on an amazing show. And we just always gave it our all. Like every damn show, we put on something new and like a new show. So if somebody saw something new, so some people would even travel to go see some of our shows.
That's cool.
With us, which is great. But
and so as you were, backing up, like as you were like in college, like did you ever have that thing where it's like I would like to make a living off of music? Like that's what you wanted to do? Okay.
Totally. I knew I was like, I want to be a rock star. I want to make millions. I want to live in the big house. I want to have all the cars.
Right.
But, shortly that just became a dream. That was just tough. At some point you just like, okay, well, things are different. I'm just going to try my best.
Yeah.
You got to be at the right place, at the right time. You got to have a record label. You got to have this. You got to have that.
Sure.
And that's when I started really taking all my knowledge and experience and all my relationships that I built and started booking shows at the Barn in Riverside.
Okay.
And I booked some of my favorite bands to this day: Cave In, ISIS.
You were basically like, if someone needed a show from a hardcore perspective, they would go to you.
Totally.
Right.
They'd be traveling, and I'd get the phone call from the booking agency asking me, and I had an office where I was part-time booking, and one of the guys that owns Golden Voice today, he had basically ran the Barn, and so he basically gave me the whole hardcore and metal side of all those shows.
Okay.
And he booked all the punk and ska music.
Right.
And we just made sure that we just didn't overlap, and I had certain days that were mine, and I just went to town trying to schedule people's bands coming through town and on certain days, and it all worked out. It was amazing. It was great until the Barn closed like 2 years after that. And we just said, well, Bill from, that was now part of owner of Golden Voice and a huge hand in Coachella and FYF Fest and Stagecoach. He was like a big inspiration for me. He worked his ass off. He made all my flyers. He gave me something. He saw something in me, and so he gave me like, a huge helping hand, as well as he knew what I was capable of with all these relationships that he could never probably tap into that market,
Right.
And, after the Barn closed, that's when I started finding myself like somehow, some way I just was like, with all the bands and the things I was doing, I wanted to make my own merchandise. So I just, I bought a kit at Aaron Brothers, and I started trying to make all my own shirts for all my bands to sell.
Right.
And it was playing with all the other bands that were seeing me make a merchandise, and they didn't have a single thing to sell except for like a demo.
Right, of course.
And then one of the girlfriends is selling the demo while they're playing
or
whatever at the booth. And it was like all these bands just came to me and wanted merchandise made. And I was just like, wow, this is
You're like, you saw a need for yourself. And then everything else started to be like, oh yeah, like hit up Jason. Like,
Totally. It just like I was the go-to merch guy to make everybody's merch, and which I didn't mind. I was like, this is great. I had like another part-time job or full-time job at the time at a hospital where my mom worked that my mom helped me get. And I just would on my evenings and on my weekends, like I just didn't have a life. I just completely just went in and made everyone's merch and just did the best I could and printed and got it to them when they needed for their shows or whatever they were doing, Yeah,
you just started to. I mean, at that time, I'm sure you just started to really develop the, the inkling of like, okay, like this is something that I would like to do as a career, like be able to fill this role that people obviously need.
Yeah, the merchandise was just incredible. Like, you know, I was starting to do bands that just became bigger names.
Right.
And that's when I was just like, wow, this is insane. You know, I did one of Unbroken's last shows, you know, with the tribute shirt to Eric. And, you know, that was just, oh man, that was like, I had goosebumps. I was printing all the merchandise.
I can imagine.
And, you know, getting Rob on the phone and just Unbroken was like one of my favorite bands. I was just like, wow, this is awesome.
Yeah, I can't believe I'm doing this. Right.
And you know, I ended up buying all of New Age Records equipment, all his silk screening equipment.
Oh, okay.
He used to print all his own shirts for all his bands, and basically do that DIY, put out the records, put out the things that he liked, and then do all their merchandise. Which, dude, Mike was just a madman, and he's still a great close friend of mine to this day, and just a great person. And run into him, talk to him all the time, and he had all this stuff just sitting in like Lake Arrowhead at his parents' garage and wasn't using it. And I was like, dude, I'm gonna buy all this stuff.
Yeah. So
my parents helped me buy it, and I later paid them off, and I just went up and picked it all up, started buying like all the stuff, and that was when it became like real. Like, my dad gave me one side of the garage, which is unheard of, and started parking that car on the side of the house. And that was just it. My parents really saw something. We're like, look, Jason's doing what he wants.
Right.
So that's it. That's when I, like, how I came up with like support to this day is my parents supported me and were 100% into whatever I was doing. As long as I wasn't stepping on anyone's toes or harming anyone, they were completely 110% backing me.
Yeah.
And still do to this
day. Well,
and
it's funny because, like, you know, hearing you where it was like you were always interested in, like you said, working with your hands. And it's like, it really does take a certain type of person to be able to do that. Because it's like honestly, like watching what you have done as far as like, you know, screen printing, like I don't know how to do shit when it comes to that. If you told me to like either fix something or do anything, like that's not me. Like,
totally.
You're like, I was like, you know, English, like I fucking nailed that shit. Totally. But if you were like, yo, Ray, do wood shop, I don't know, dude. I could probably fake my way through it.
It's just how you're wired.
Yeah.
That's just it. That's the best thing that's ever been said to me is like, everyone's wired differently.
Totally.
Some people like clean houses, some people like messy houses, some people work on this first and work on this last, and I completely do the opposite. I work on that first. You know, it's just how everyone's wired and how everyone's grown up, and some people are just hands-on people, and some people pay somebody to go fix something because it'll take less time.
Right. Less frustration.
Totally,
right. Yeah.
And you could just live a better life, and that's why there's jobs. That's why there's people that do things, and that's why you know, that's what makes the world go around.
Yeah, know, exactly. And so another interesting element that I've always found really cool. I mean, and you touched on it earlier, where it's like, you know, you and your brother balance each other out. Like, you know, whatever his weaknesses are your strengths, and vice versa. But I mean, since you guys have worked together for so long with the clothing company and the clothing line, like, there had to have been moments where you're like, this fucking sucks. I fucking hate you. Like, or just that sort of, you know, the whole brother aspect coming to it. And then you add the friendship and business and just like, I mean, I'm sure there were moments where you guys wanted to like walk away from each other.
Totally. I mean, I still sometimes say it to this day. I mean, it's crazy. You know, there was this time where we were, you know, for the first couple of years, I think we just worked hard, focused, and we had something new, and it was so fresh that we didn't want to upset a customer. So we just worked hard. We I don't know, whatever it is. And then I think later on, when it became more of like, we had a clothing line that we were starting to offer.
Right.
And Josh was more artistic, and I had like the vision, and, you know, I could concept some of the things that he was creating. That's when it became really, really tough for us, because, you know, I said it to him the other day, it's tough. You butt heads when you're both passionate about something.
Yeah.
And that's a great problem to have, but it could get ugly, you know. And we moved into this huge warehouse where we were just occupying, you know, trying to occupy every square inch of this place. It was probably a building that was way too big for us, but, you know, we had the lease for so long, and it was so cheap that it just made sense at the time, and we knew we were going to grow into this building at some point.
Right.
And man, it was crazy. You know, I remember, like, I would have these special meetings on the weekends, and they'd always just get heated. And they would always just turn into like insane like
shouting matches.
Exactly, just getting nowhere really fast. And I used to have like a total chip on my shoulders. Like I just I thought everything that I wanted was right, and Josh thought everything he wanted was right. And at the end of the day, those two things were on two separate pages, two separate chapters. And man, in front of employees, I'd blow up. I'd yell. I was a really good boss to my employees. I treated everybody amazing, even though, and that's why I got really just hurt really quick and just beaten into the ground, because I felt like all the employees never respected me because I never beaten them up a little bit, and I really never spoke to them like
a
normal bosses probably would.
Oh, dude.
And
such a tough.
I got trampled on, man. I was like their best friend.
Yep.
I hung out with them outside of work, and they could always step on me. They always knew that I was a cushion when they wanted to take time off, or they were having hard times with a boyfriend or their girlfriend. They could take time, emotional day off or something. And Jason was always there,
Right.
And I was their friend. And Josh was the quiet guy. No one ever went to Josh for those things.
Right.
So I had a little bit more stress on my shoulders than Josh did.
Because you were also, no one that starts a business is looking forward to like, oh, dude, I can't wait till I have employees and I can act like human resources. No, like that's like
totally.
That's like 1% of the people that start businesses where it's like, I can't fucking wait to be like managing employees and like, no one likes that. So it's like,
totally.
I could see where that was weighing on your shoulders, and then having, where it's like you just wanted to view your brother, I'm sure, as an employee at times, where you're just like, Josh, I'm telling you should do this.
Totally. And that was never like that.
No.
Like I could tell him what he needed to do.
Right.
Whether or not he did it was another question.
Right.
And that same went for the employees. And if you don't respect one another in front of employees, it just, or somebody walks over on you and someone else sees that, it's an impression that someone will always know what they're capable of doing to that person. And life goes on. So I think that's when I started to, like, all the stress and everything just really was just all on weighing on my shoulders. And man, I mean, there's several phones I broke, tossing phones and at the wall and breaking walls and punching things and punching cases of T-shirts and doing all the things that I would do just because I was just so heated at the moment and pissed off, and breaking stuff and that we really needed to use, and having to go rebuy those things and just going, man, what an idiot. Like, I can't believe I just did that. Like, that's crazy. Well, because I did it in front of all these employees. Like, that, I just feel like the littlest, smallest ant on earth, and a foot just came and smashed me, And, I had some people that were in it for the long haul and just really stuck by me, and they knew how much I was going through, and some of those people are still good friends of mine to this day. But it basically, at that time, building the company, is like we had, the Social Distortion blasting in the background because all of us listen to Social D, and it was like a friends hangout, but we were on the clock working and trying to pump out Gorilla Biscuits and Youth of Today shirts, as well as a Paul Frank account. And then Ruka walks in and goes, hey, I want some shorts done, and in 2 hours time, because BJ Penn's fighting in several hours, and at the MGM Grand, I still gotta drive down there and give them to him so he could put them on tonight, So it's just like I had all walks of life, because we are a custom shop and we did custom things and we printed amazing things, and that was the one thing that my crew did, is like we all stuck together. I got out there and I got my hands dirty. I was never too good to do that. And that's how I showed everybody, like, hey man, I'm not above you.
Right.
I'm getting my hands dirty. I'm doing everything you're doing. I still do that to this day.
Of course, yeah. That's just always who you are. Yeah.
Totally. I'm hands-on, just like you said. It's like that's it. So, some things changed within the company, and as time went on, I got out of the screen printing business, and
which, I mean, honestly, in retrospect, like, once you told me you were doing that, I'm like, good move, Jason.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, I mean, there is such a, there's obviously such a demand in that, but the one thing that always frustrates me when I see people that do the screen printing business, especially when they're focused on bands, it was so difficult to look at people who are just like, hey, Jason, I need like, a $10,000 order. I'll get you in about 9 months.
Totally.
And how could any small business survive on, I mean, you could maybe survive on one of those, but when you have like 5 or 6 bands and it's taking you months to years to follow up on an invoice, and you're just like, what the fuck? Dude?
Yeah.
And people, I mean, no 16 or 17-year-old kid is going to understand that, and just because that's your age, but it's just like, it always killed me watching that. Like, I just remember anytime I would place an order for shirts with you and you were kind enough to extend credit, that was always like, yo, dude, prior to number 1, let's fucking get this shirt paid for. Like, let's get this shit paid for. Because it was like, someone else was relying on you. And I just don't think that everybody has that wired within their head. And
exactly.
And I'm sure you were just killing yourself with that.
Yeah, I mean, I had the clients that were the bread and butter.
Yeah.
The Paul Franks and people that paid me in 30 days if I was lucky.
Right.
And when they did pay me, it was like huge, and, I had payroll. I had payroll every 2 weeks. I couldn't make up excuses and tell these guys, like, hey, man,
sorry,
I can't pay you.
Yeah, blame bleeding through.
Totally.
Or whoever.
Just got off Ozfest, and the guys came in and they're giving me $2,000 out of the 9 they owe me.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just, I believed everyone, I knew, but it was all growing. Like, we were growing, they were growing. I tried not to look at them different, but it was hard. Because I was so passionate about what I was doing. It was my ass on the line. I'm like putting all the money into the merchandise. And at the end of the day, I'm the guy with the bills. I'm the ones with the headache. And they have bills and headaches and problems on the road.
Yeah, of course.
It was just tough, and when I got out of that business, I just was like, I just had it. Like, it's the money I was making with doing To Die For, it was Die Trying, and then later turned into, To Die For, and I trademarked the name. It was the money I was making and the profit and the business that was growing online when that started coming around and you could buy your stuff online and all the bands were getting successful. That's when I started seeing, like, man, it's not worth it. This is not worth me to print and all the stress and all the things, or me hating or looking at somebody and disliking somebody or hating an employee because they stole from me while I was at Hellfest or printed some shirts for their buddy for free using my equipment and my electricity. All the things that could possibly happen, like, I can truly say I've seen and done it all, even after getting out of the screen printing business. It probably got even harder. So those are the things that come along with owning a business and having employees, and you just get smarter. You work smarter and not harder, and that's easier said than done. But after a while, I just was like, I want to grow the brand, and we just got rid of all the employees. Slowly got rid of the warehouse and the huge building that we were in, and just focused on To Die For and printing our own stuff.
Right. And
I just got completely, and it was just so hard to just stop doing things. It was like breaking up with girlfriends, mini girlfriends, or like divorcing wives. That's kind of what it was like.
Sure.
Still they're coming around like, hey, where do we get prints at?
Totally.
How do we do this? Hey, Jason, this guy's having problems doing it. I'm just like, oh gosh, come on. You're killing me at this point,
Right.
And that's when I started work, when I said I was working smarter and not harder, I became this, I started to, like, find out who I really was and started to say to myself, like, at the end of the day, it's just t-shirts, it's just product, it's apparel, it's nothing to hate one another about, it's nothing to throw a phone and break things and get so frustrated about. It's like, why do I do this to myself? And that's when I started, I think, kind of finding a better partnership and better relationship with my brother. Is because I think he was heated too. We would butt heads, and we started kind of just slowly but surely finding common ground.
Totally. And I think the key element that you hit on there was, like, obviously balance. It's like, once you're able to figure out that, just because you pour your heart and soul into something and you take a day off, like, that's allowed. Like, those things are allowed. You have to be able to separate the business with real life. And like, it's just because, when you're, 22, 23, 24, 25, whatever, around that age, and you're existing within that world, like, that's the only world that you know. And so, of course, it's like, you were probably there like 18, 19 hours a day, and you would have no problem with that. I mean, it would then manifest itself with you breaking shit.
Totally.
But it was like, and that's why it's like anytime I reflect on, like, because people always, especially because we're involved in like youth culture, it's like, you're involved with obviously like, a brand of clothing that will always appeal to, kids essentially, people between the ages of like, 15 and 25. But you and I are getting older, but we're always involved with this stuff. And so like looking back and being like, looking at whatever, 20, 21-year-olds. And I was like, I'm really glad that I'm at the age where I'm at now, because like you said, they're working harder working smarter, not harder. It's like, you don't know that shit when you're 20.
Totally.
You're just fucking running around like
you're anxious, you're amazed, you're surprised, you're just full of this energy. You could work 24 hours. You don't know. You're just this person that's just full of life and just eager to break into something new and do something. And that's why there's all these clothing brands nowadays. Like everybody knows where they can get t-shirt blanks, and they know they can look in the yellow pages or look online and Google a screen printer in their neighborhood and find something to get done and call it something, and then put it up online on a big cartel, and and away it goes, and then, oh crap, stuff's not selling. Oh and there's a lot of things that go into like having a brand or creating a business. And so I just look at it like, those little guys, they can't stress me out. They can't bum me out. They're probably putting more things out there into people's hands than there really needs to be. But at the end of the day, as long as they're working and doing something they like and they're happy and they're trying something out, I mean, they got to land on their face once or twice to figure out the hard way. Cause that's the way I did it,
Totally. Well, so kind of hitting on that, like sort of to wrap things up, because I know, just because, like you said, you have made a lot of mistakes, or like, and not, career crippling mistakes, but stuff where you were like, fuck, I wish I could have done that differently.
Totally.
What are one or two things that kind of pop in your head that, you would be able to impart to people where it's like, like, try not to do this because this is what I did and it turned out terribly.
Yeah. The one thing that always it just always sat with me is when times were good and we were making good money, Josh and I, we went and we were seeing like, all the owners of all the companies rolling up in Range Rovers and Porsches and all these amazing cars that are like, 50 grand plus.
Right.
One day I said to myself, I'm going to go buy an Audi, and then Josh went and he bought a Mercedes. And the moment you roll up in one of those cars, no matter if it's a concert in front of your employees, they will always look at you differently. They will always think to themselves, oh man, times are good, huh?
Right.
Like, things are great. I should be getting a pay raise now. Like, I should be getting this. I should be getting that. Oh, and that just puts a taste in a thought in someone's mind that you don't ever want, whether an employee, manager, whatever the title they are. So, it's almost like I wish that I had just some crappy car that I could just drive to work. But sooner or later, they're going to find out what kind of car and what things that I have at home,
Right.
Even though I had a roommate and my rent might have been cheap.
Right.
I had this rad car and I felt like, dude, I deserve this car.
Right.
They don't understand that. They don't understand that. They'll never understand it. They just think to themselves like, times are good.
Right.
I remember one of our customers and friends to this day going, oh man, things are good over at Today 4, huh? Like Jason and Josh, they're rolling.
Yeah.
Audis?
They're balling. Yeah.
Wow. And, my good friend Shauna and just, I guess she was like receptionist help, accounting. She kind of just went and did everything. And she's like, wait till you see what's in our bank account. Or, do you realize how many hours Jason works and Josh works? Do you realize that those dudes do not have lives?
Right.
Do you realize like they probably just drive that thing to work and home and back?
Right.
So, that was a big mistake, when times are good, and I didn't figure that out until later on. I mean, Josh and I got our cars repossessed in front of us. We had to hide Josh's car for months and months and months.
Really?
We hid his car for like months.
Wow.
They just didn't know where Josh lives, so they never knew where the car was. And then having my Audi just basically repossessed right in front of me, in front of like the building, and everybody's doors are open and everyone sees this tow truck coming and just snag my car right in front of my, I mean, it was like, I ran out, got everything that was meaningful to me. I knew it was going to get repossessed. I was getting the threatening phone calls. I mean, these guys, they won't stop. They won't stop. They'll do whatever it takes to get that car back if you're not paying for it, and which they should.
Of course.
At that time.
Yeah, it's not like you were like, what are you doing? It's like,
totally. At that time, I was like, fuck, I'm going to slash and find every fucking guy that repossessing, takes cars from people and fucking burn their house down and fucking slash. And there's a reason why you don't see repossessed, like these SUV trucks or whatever they are with this system in the back on the streets, because they know that these cars will they'll come out the next morning and their cars will be completely either stolen, windows broken or something. They hide these trucks in a yard or something.
Right.
And so, I hated them at the time, but they got to make a living. They got to do
they do a job.
They were taking back what's theirs that I wasn't paying for.
Right.
I completely just did not have the money.
Yeah.
And I wasn't lying to them.
Right.
Things dried up.
Yeah.
I took money and shuffled it around, and the last thing to get paid was Audi and Mercedes.
Right.
And, another thing that I had done, like around that time, my car was getting repossessed, is I bought a house, like a brand new house, with my girlfriend at the time. And she made insane amounts of money, so she could buy the house and do what she needed to do. And, she worked hard, and she just had a job. She had a paycheck. So she had that constant money coming in. And me, I had to find, Mr. Owner, like, of a company, like, here I am. I gotta meet in the middle, like, with my girlfriend, and, I gotta pay for a house that's mine too, so we had to split 50-50. And dude, coming up with that mortgage payment, like, every single month was just mind blowing to me. It's just like, at the time it made sense. It made sense to buy a house and not rent.
Right.
But dude, it got tough. I mean, It became like, oh, Jason, you got to go find a job. You got to quit doing what you're doing. You don't have money. And dude, as a business owner and somebody that is so passionate, I don't want to hear that. That's hard to hear, man.
Oh, yeah.
It's like
the reality is coming down on you.
Totally. It's like your best friend saying, hey, man, your chick she's not cool, man.
Yeah.
How do you tell somebody? You're like, dude, my chick's the coolest.
Yeah, for sure.
You're like, there's a reason why nobody wants to ever hang out with you when you're with your chick.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, dude, a couple years into owning a house, I just, money, my business, the things that I lived for doing, it all became between our relationship, and I had to go. I had to leave. I had to get out of the relationship. I had to leave my house behind, and leave it all on her shoulders now. And it sucked, man. I mean, we had a house completely brand new, and just, I mean, it's crazy, it's just mind blowing, and it's all because I chose the business over everything, because that's my wife, I'm married to my business,
Right.
And so going back to this, looking back on the mistakes I made, I will never ever buy a house. I don't believe in it. I don't think it's worth the stress. I feel like you could just live anywhere you want and just rent for the rest of your life, and just, someone might say you're throwing your life away or your money away, but that's just the way I think. And then going forward, no matter how much money I make or whatever happens to me next, I will never go and buy a brand new car. I would just never have I would love to just pay it off and just know that I own it and drive it around, and whatever happens to that car.
Right.
The sense of owning somebody, I nowadays I just we live off cash. If I don't have the money, I don't buy it. And that's why I think we've kind of gone backwards, and it's kind of hurt to die for in certain ways, but helped us in other ways.
Yeah.
Is that if I don't have the money for something, I don't buy it.
Well, you're just returning to the basic tenets of how people should live their lives.
Totally.
And you're just while we may be stripping away opportunities at some point, it's that's for the longevity of the company as a whole. It's I want to be around in 10 to 20 years, because you're just I've committed to this. I don't want this to fizzle out in 5 years because I've taken out, $300,000 in, projects that, ended up completely failing. So
totally.
It's having all that for every failure that you have. I mean, it's great that you have these distinct moments where you can be all right, this is I distinctly know what is not right for my life right now.
Exactly.
And in turn, what is not right for my business now.
Totally.
And that's like, you have to fail in order to be able to learn that.
And exactly that. It's like, that's why I said earlier, it's like you got to fall on your face, whether you're building something from the ground up, an ice cream shop, yogurt shop, whatever you want to make. You got to fall on your face a couple of times to get up and learn it the hard way and then discover if it's worth it or not.
Right.
And it might take years. It might take, a decade. It could take whatever. And that's what it's taken me to like get this far, to like finally go, man, it's a long journey. It's a journey.
Yeah.
And it's about the things that you do and the choices we make, and they could be good or bad, but you learn from your mistakes and you learn the hard way. And sometimes they just slap you in the face, and sometimes they reward you by, with a pat on the back.
Right.
And that's just it. It's just about the journey. That's just it. You can't go into life anymore with, dude, I'm going to make millions. I'm going to be a million. That attitude alone.
Yeah.
We work with an artist named Stephen Daly, and somebody asked him once. He's an old friend of mine, older. He's like a couple years older than me. And, somebody came up to him one day and was like, dude, how do I become like a full-time artist? How do I just start painting and selling my paintings and start like asking for a lot? And Steven said to me when he was explaining to me, dude, you're going already about it all wrong.
Right.
It's about the journey. It's about the process. It's about, and I was like, dude, you're so right.
Yeah.
And it took him to get beaten up and torn down to really discover all the things that he does today.
Yeah.
Living in a house, within his means, painting within his means, painting things he likes, showing at galleries he wants to show at, doing things that are like safe, but yet scream Stephen Daly.
Right.
And it's all about that. It's not about like, man, being in the biggest gallery tomorrow, because the biggest gallery is not going to want you if you got that attitude, and you can't. It's hard to put a price on something, not everybody sees it like that, like, oh, how is this thing worth $50,000?
Right.
Can you explain it to me?
Yeah.
Oh, it only took you a month? How am I giving you $50,000 for something that only took you a month to paint?
Totally.
You know what I mean? So that's just it. I always think about that, and I'm always like, that's great, man. That's like something that really inspired me and pushes me to this day, and I always think about it like, man.
You can. That's something that you can obviously legitimately hold on to and be like, yes, this is a tenet that I can carry on for a long time.
Totally. So
well. I really appreciate you obviously hanging out.
Thanks, Ray. I really appreciate it. It's a blast.
It's
always blessing to be here.
I always have a blast talking to you, Jason. Well, thank you, dude.
Thank you.
So there you have it. I apologize this ran a little bit long, but Jason had a lot of amazing things to say. I didn't want to cut it out. So thanks for hanging out with us, and visit propertyofzach.com and join us next week for another awesome guest. I'm not going to tell you quite yet. You'll have to figure it out. Bye.